Hi, shut up and listen. Umamusume Pretty Derby. Ever heard of it? You might have. And then you forgot about it like most people did last year. But I didn't, somehow. And I'm sure you, watching this video right now, hasn't forgotten either. Or you're someone like me and has left a significant impact that kept your interest going either with the games, anime, and more. Isn't that right? I said shut up and listen. Umamusume as a franchise has stood the test of time as a game with normalized gambling that came out in 2021 in Japan and then released globally in 2025. A live service game having an active fanbase after 4 years is not an easy task, especially considering some bigger budget games don't make it past 2 weeks. You might wonder how they kept that success long enough to release in another market and extend its fanbase even further. Well, it's the gambling, but it's also the characters. Now, if you just woken up from a night of alcoholic debauchery or a fentanyl-induced coma and found your way here somehow, let me break it down for you real simple. Umamusume Pretty Derby is a franchise where there are cute anime high school girls who are also idols, and they're also racehorses. Think Sailor Moon, Hannah Montana, plus horses, sprinkle a little bit of gambling, and bam, you have a franchise. The gameplay aspect being that these horse girls are racers, so they race. In fact, the thing that this franchise will always keep reminding you is that Umamusumes are born to run. And this is, usually, the main appeal of the series. The other thing that gives flavor to this world is that all of them are based on real Japanese thoroughbred racehorses. Side games shows real love and care for this aspect of their characters, as their personality, story, and even their outfits are inspired from their real-life horse, jockey, and events that transpired through their career. I believe the success of any form of fiction are the characters in the world. Sure, world building and story goes a long way, but to me, the characters that inhabit said world are more appealing, and that's my main reason why I've stuck around this long, and Umamusume provides a lot of great characters that I've grown attached to and have become easy favorites. But there's a lot of them. A lot of them. Say you want to get into Umamusume and don't know if it has a character that is right for you, or you're about to engage in some gambling and don't know if the current banner character is worth investing in. If only there was someone crazy enough to categorize every single character in Umamusume Pretty Derby and categorize them in arbitrary categories in the hope that people can find one that is right for them, or maybe get a chuckle or two out of it. Hey, that's me. Hi, it's me. I'm that guy. I'm the guy, you're watching this video right now, you're about to learn about that. So, in an attempt to get off my lazy ass and do something that I could have done using AI, but because I'm not a pussy, I went with something that I could easily do with immense passion but limited knowledge. So I went with the Google Spreadsheet with what little I recalled from using Excel back in community college, back when we were using Windows 8. No, not the marginally better 8.1, 8. Anyway, in this chart made purely by yours truly, which you can find a link in the description for this video if you want to follow along, we have every single playable character in the Umamusume Pretty Derby mobile game. I built the basics for this table including every single character with a link to their wiki page on the y-axis, and using the information that I could find, added categories on the x-axis with a check mark to denote if they fit this category or not. My dream would have to make this into a website with a filter by category option, but I don't know how to do that, so that's why we settled on this. And just like every shitty YouTuber says, without further ado, let's get into it. But first, some context. So I created the basics for this project a long time ago, and then I live streamed the categorization of all these characters into their categories. But since the time of that stream and actually beginning production for this video, more Umas have come out that are not on this list of 133. So just so you know that the latest Uma on this list would be Red Desire, and anything else is not included. I apologize that this video is instantly outdated and misleading, but unfortunately I have a real job, and is also in the process of preparing for my trip to Japan.
Who the fuck is that?
The game is still ongoing, and of course more characters will keep coming out after this video, but it would be wrong of me to not point this out because I could have done more research, but then this video would have never come out, and I just need to get out of my head already. And now for some ground rules. There are Umas that are included in this list that are not exactly playable, such as Daring Tact, but she does at least have a card and is featured in some careers and stories and game modes. similar to how many characters in the global release only exist as cards currently. But I am using the Umamusume Wiki's list of characters to build this list, so bear that in mind. Also, just want to point out that if I refer to a character as male, I'm usually speaking about the real-life stallion the character is based on. For example, if I refer to Special Week as he/him, I'm talking about Special Week the horse. If I refer to Special Week as she/her, I'm talking about the Umamusume. And yes, this will get confusing as we get into mares, so just bear with me on that one. Lastly, I am not including NPCs, only playable Umas that you can find in banners and can be playable. So don't expect characters like Happy Meek, Lil Cocon, Bitter Glass, and characters of the like. And I don't care what funny Reddit theories you throw at me, I am not including Tazuna or the director. I know Tazuna shows some capabilities that don't seem human at first, that hat is awfully suspicious, but I'm also already conditioned to not trust a word that comes out of her mouth. Now, Director Akikawa, I draw similar suspicion, but I could see myself making the exception because of the fan-theorized connection to the Canadian-bred, French-trained racehorse Northern Taste, and the interaction that she does have with some of the members of the cast, which could be due to them being descendants of Northern Taste. But again, you can't have her run in a race, so she doesn't count. For the structure of this video, I'm not going to go over every single Uma, because while I am absolutely capable of doing that, I at least want to respect some of your time. So instead, we'll discuss each category, what it represents, and some standouts of that category. I will also put on the screen all the characters in this list that I deem fitting of this category, so let's get started. I just want to reiterate that this project was just a fun challenge to myself to make something that I could have very easily done with AI, but I refused to use it because, once again, I am not a pussy. So this was all made purely by hand, with poorly done research and a lot of autism. Enjoy.
Yay! Do ya yo?
The first category is G1 Race Winner. Now, this should be obvious as to what it represents, but to the dumbasses in the audience who don't know or just ask ChatGPT because they're fucking stupid, yes, I will continue to be AI's biggest hater. It's my channel, and you can't stop me. In thoroughbred horse racing, there are levels of competition, which are G3s, G2, and G1s, that being the highest and most prestigious level of competition. Hopefully with that context, you can intuit that not every horse is capable of winning a G1 race, or even more than one for that matter. It takes an astounding level of hard work and dedication from multiple people just to make a horse win a race this big. Trainers, farm staff, veterinarians, and jockeys put in a joint effort to make these majestic hunks of flesh and shit with essentially 4 huge fingers running about as fast as a car and win a competition with many other horses of the same quality. It's a tall order to win a G1, and you would think this would be one of the requirements to be represented as an Umamusume, but that's not necessarily the case, as you can see in this category, which is why it helps that this is a yes or no category, since it shows that just because they didn't win a G1 race doesn't mean that they didn't leave an impactful legacy to be immortalized as an Umamusume. What better example for this than the anime-only team, Team Canopus, which consists of Nice Nature, Twin Turbo, Ecunodictus, Mambo, Royce, and this motherfucking piece of shit that I hate called Sounds of Earth. Now, even outside of the anime-only team, these characters are often seen together in-game and get along with each other because all of their real-life counterparts have never won a G1 race. Despite that, they're all lovable and memorable characters, except for Sounds of Earth, who's a piece of shit and I hate her. Nice Nature, for example, is a, pun intended, nice nature girl who's a bit of a cynic, but she hopes to see herself as more than just a side character who's always ending up in 3rd place, just like her real-life counterpart, who is commonly known as the Bronze Collector, and also achieving 3rd place in one of Japan's most prestigious year-end races, the Iri Makinen, 3 times in a row. She also gets along with old people because before his passing in 2023, Nice Nature was the oldest living JRA racehorse. Another great example would be the 6th member of the Golden Generation that everybody forgot about, Tsurumaru Tsuyoshi, who also never won a G1 race, but did get to compete against some of the greatest racehorses in his era. And just like most people forgot about her, Cygames also forgot about her, as she was introduced into the main story in 2022, and was only actually playable in this game 3 years after. The next category is Main Character Energy. This one should also be self-explanatory, but to boil it down, these are characters which are the main protagonists or the central focus of their story or the catalyst of a major story. Now, it's worth pointing out that I'm specifically looking at this in terms of anime, film, and manga spin-offs.
Also a play. Yeah, by the way, did you know there was a play? Yeah, it was a thing, but then COVID happened. Oh no.
Every character that is playable is the main protagonist of their career mode, obviously. And also, I'm not including the in-game main story, as that would mean I would have to give this category to Winning Ticket, and I think she deserves nothing. Look, there's a lot of horses here, I love all of them, but there's a few that I hate and I will let you know about them. Notable members of this category are the big three of the TV anime and the throat goat Oguri. You could make the argument that Narita Top Road is the main protagonist of Road to the Top, hence the name. However, I am including the main three just because this was Cygames testing the concept of having more than two protagonists in a story, and they greatly succeeded with making three very compelling protagonists who make you want to cheer for all of them equally. Also, because calling TM Opera O anything but the main protagonist would be a great disservice. Every story should be about TM Opera O. Also, Jungle Pocket and Agnes Tachyon is one you could debate about, since Tachyon is more of a major catalyst of Jungle Pocket's growth as a protagonist, but she's such a fantastic rage baiter and also such an unstoppable force in that film that I can't help but classify her as one. Yes, I am incredibly biased towards my faves, how can you tell? Now hold on, you may ask, what about Manhattan Cafe and Dance to Flame? They have some strong moments in that movie too, and are also pivotal members of that generation. What about them? To which I reply with, shut the fuck up, that's the next category, you stupid bitch. Supporting characters are not just characters that support the story. These are characters whose real-life counterpart could also be interpreted as a supporting character. What do I mean by this? Meijo Totou is a perfect example, as the real Meijo Totou was almost always right behind his contemporary TM Opera O, and could never defeat him until his only G1 win at the 2001 Takarasuga Kinen. So obviously in Umamusume, Meijo Totou is a big boob bumbling buffoon who lives in the shadow of TM Opera O and likes it there, honestly, because she greatly admires Opera O's massive optimism and wants to learn that from her. Now, some characters in the anime can also fit both categories, as it's common for characters from previous generations or seasons to come back and give advice to the newer generation of Umas. Tokai Teo and Mejuro McQueen are both great for this, as they are side characters in Season 1, become the focus of Season 2, and then stick around in Season 3 to act as mentors to the next duo of protagonists. Although I would argue that in that season, Goldship was actually a better mentor to Kita-san Black than Teo herself.
Wow, I wonder what's next for me.
You peaked.
What?
You peaked.
You're kidding! After all that?
Yeah, sorry.
Speaking of Goldship, let's talk about the Weirdos. They stand above the rest not just because of their outstanding career, but because they're just so fucking weird. There's too many to mention, because that's what makes like 80% of this cast so appealing. That's just what you have to do to make people care about a horse. I mean, how can you make a horse like Kopano Reiki, a prominent dirt racehorse of the modern era, interesting? The answer? Feng Shui. Now, some of the weirdness is out of left field like Ricky, but there are weirdos like Mihono Bourbon whose robotic personality is taken from fans of the real Mihono Bourbon, giving him the nickname of the Cyborg due to his intense training and consistent pace on the turf. But because that's not weird enough, she also unintentionally destroys anything electrical that she touches. It's like a crazy electrical reverse Midas touch. And like I said earlier, Goldship just stands at the top of the weirdos, arguably having more brand recognition than the actual mascots of the franchise because of her weirdness, which she inherited from her real-life counterpart, as he was an unpredictable and genuinely insane but very talented racehorse. Honestly, if there was a word that could describe Goldship, it would be chaos. Which brings me to my next category, one-word descriptors. Am I trying too hard with these, by the way? I'll hold back a bit. One word is a category best fit for characters that can be easily described by a single word. That word being a word that pops up a lot in their dialogue or throughout their story. Now, we could do this with a lot of characters like the word festival for Kita-san Black, coffee for Manhattan Cafe, or the word ordinary if you did Mambo's career mode. But I feel like these, while true, don't really describe the character completely. I'm mainly focusing on characters such as Marvelous Sunday, who use the word marvelous as a comma. But I also make an inclusion in this category for characters who are the living incarnation of a single word. Goldchip is a being of chaos, Tannhäuser is the living incarnation of a goober, Vodka is cool, Bakshin, Scarlet is number 1, and Shinko Windy is a furry. Going back to Machitan and Marvy for a second, they both fit this next category and the previous two by having unfortunate/funny names. This is one of my favorite categories because it focuses on the aspect that everybody knows about horse racing, which is the absolute buck wild names that these horses have. Now, the unfortunate part comes from the weird transition into Umamusume all being women. So male-sounding names like King Halo, Mr. CB, and Narita Bryan sound a bit weird, but it's still kind of funny. The Matikane duo are a perfect example of challenging people to say their name 5 times fast. Blast One Piece and Mino Top Gun are great examples that copyright just doesn't apply to horses. Stay Gold, which, despite the name, was nicknamed a silver and bronze collector. No reason, for no particular reason. Also, Majora Bright not being very bright at all. But in my opinion, the one standing above the rest is Narita Top Road. Yep. These next categories we focus on more individual characteristics, and here's where we see a lot of the cast blending together a bit, but still being distinctive enough. For example, there are a few edgelords in Umamusume, but they each fill a different level of edge, like Duramente being Shadow the Hedgehog, and Air Shakur being possibly the only student in Transit Academy allowed to say the word fuck once a year. I almost call this category UGG, because of characters like Narita Bryan being the living representation of UGG. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my edgelords, but the ones in Umamusume don't pique my interest as much, because edgelords in Umamusume usually boast a lot about their own strength in a kind of annoying way. Saying, I'm the best because I'm stronger and I want it badly is not as interesting as I am stronger because I put in a lot of effort. Which is why Air Shakur is kinda the only edgelord I actually like, though the effort she puts in is just analytics and data. And also because of the Tupac references. Now, theater kids come in a huge variety of flavors. They also tend to be very boastful about their abilities, but in a very dramatic and fun way. Such as Tanino Gimlet, Air Groove, and King Halo being wildly elegant, also having highly dramatic attitudes, but each having slightly different levels of drama given their background. We also have different genres of theater itself, with Gimlet just committing way too much to the bit, and Fuji just being a slutty magician. But atop of all, reigning supreme is obviously the king TM motherfucking Opera O. In Manhattan Cafe's career mode, she refers to Cafe's, aura, as a friend of Leckermal, a reference to an 1892 German opera of Hansel and Gretel, which is the only time the witch has ever been given a name. Just peak theater kid. Edgelords and theater kids are good all-encompassing archetypes describing their attitude and a little bit of their morality, but now we divert into a bit of a personal category, which are characters that fit a very annoying Japanese stereotype. Look, I like anime. I've watched what I considered a normal amount of anime, and Umamusume being a Japanese franchise for a Japanese audience, you do see a lot of similar archetypes generally seen in a lot of anime and Japanese media. Mino Top Gun is my go-to example for this, representing the little sister who can't wait to grow up, constantly trying to come off as a mature adult woman when she's a 4'0" kid with a photographic memory. I don't mind the big brother gimmick from characters like Rice Shower and Karen-chan because that's a fairly innocent and cute relationship a trainer and trainee could have, but some of the shit that Mino says to her trainer makes me feel like she's secretly a fed trying to get me on a list. And if any of you motherfuckers come at me with shit like, oh, who cares, she's the horse, you need to let God into your heart. Other notable mentions aren't as annoying as Maya's, but are still kinda charming as long as it's not overdone, like King Halo's Ojo-sama laugh, and Agnes Digital living up to her real-life counterpart's nickname, that being the pervert. Though to be fair to Digiton, it's kinda hard not to gush out for Yuri with how much aggressive Yuri vibes some of these characters emit. Sorry, I lied, I'm not holding back on these segues at all. Look, I know this is a family-friendly franchise, but when you have a setting with only female characters and you present it to the internet, it's impossible not to catch these vibes. But also, Cygames are the ones pulling the levers, so I don't know. Vodka and Scarlet, Operando To, Tachyon and Cafe, and also Jungle Pocket, and Air Shakur, and Nichino Flower? What the fuck? There's a lot of what I call intentional and unintentional Yuri in this franchise. The intentional one, like the relationship between Seiyun Sky and Nishino Flower, as seen in her SR card, Lifting Your Spirits, referencing the fact that the two horses lived in the same farm and mated in real life.
Think about wife. Regret.
Fun fact, she also had a kid with Agnes Tachyon named Nishino Offense. That's a sick name. Same with Majuro McQueen and Ikuno Dictus, but that one's weird because one of them is very clearly into feed. I don't know which one, but good for them, I guess. Now, for the unintentional aggressive Yuri vibes, come from characters who, on appearance alone, show that they are down for whatever. Sirius Symboli, Fuji Kiseki, and Tanino Gimlet all have violently aggressive lesbian vibes, and it also has a real effect in the world of Umamusume. Special Week isn't as aggressive in looks, but her obsession with Suzuka does make her fit that category. It also doesn't help that they are roommates, which feels like it's cheating, but just roommates don't give each other leg massages every night. Just saying, good for them. Okay, there's way too many to mention, but please indulge me with these next ones because they're like so fucking wild. Of the TV animes, I thought Season 2 was one of the gayest ones while still having a good amount of sports drama, but just like the pop-off moments scaled up, so did the Yuri in Season 3. And no, I don't mean Kita-san Black and Satono Diamond. Those two, I don't buy it considering that they are best friends since they were kids. So, call me a dumb, uncultured Yuri fan, but I think their friendship is genuine. I mean, like I always say, roomies give each other massages, besties buy each other's merch. I already mentioned I do not like Sounds of Earth for reasons we'll get into later, but the first thing she does on screen, outside of being a fucking fraud, is pinning Kita-san against a wall and cabedons her, and in that same season, Cheval Grand also just flat out realizes she's out of the closet, also for Kita-san Black, which is very brave, not just for her, but also for Cygames and Crunchyroll not changing that at all. But in typical anime fashion, not addressing it at all. And just indulge me with this last one because it completely changed my opinion of the character, that is, Daitaku Helios. I had no real interest or appreciation for this gimmicky Gyaru Sumer, who up until now, I only knew her for that, and also being besties with Mejiro Palmer, but I'm not talking about those two. This bitch sees Daichi Ruby for the first time in her life, drops dead, and immediately confesses to her. Like, wow. Obviously, Daichi Ruby, being the discount Mejuro brick wall that she is, ignores her frequent advances, but that doesn't stop Helios. Admittedly a bit creepy, but it's still kind of funny, and gay. And this extends from the fact that the two horses were often paired up by fans, but they never did actually end up mating. So naturally, I went from not liking her to being completely down with this gay-ass Gyaru Zoomer. Let's just hope they don't nerf that in the English release when she comes out next year. Moving out of the aggressive Yuri territory into a more wholesome territory is the mommy category. I swear I'm holding back on this one. Initially, the concept of this category was just Super Creek for obvious reasons, and it was supposed to represent the less aggressive Yuri vibes. But then I remembered something about Tanino Gimlet. Now, she would be someone I would call mommy and beg her to destroy me. Don't lie, you would too. But then I remembered her relationship with Vodka, who also fits that same category. Now, for those who don't know, you can see this in the short series Umayuru, where she is heavily featured. Vodka has a very high level of admiration for Gimlet and thinks of her as the epitome of coolness. So she follows her a lot, borrows a lot of her traits, and some of her design as well. And this is because the real-life Tanino Gimlet is Vodka's dad. And then I was reminded of one of my favorite aspects about Umamusume, which is the familiar bond that is represented throughout the franchise. And there is a massive amount of it. Like, did you ever question why Teo is so obsessed with Symboli Rudolph and wants to be a Triple Crown champion just like her? Father and son. Ever wonder why Daiwa Scarlet is the only person that admires Agnes Tachyon despite her being a menace? father and daughter. Ever wonder why Gold Ship is always clowning on Major McQueen and often failing disastrously? Cause you're not getting one over your old man, Golshi. Grandpa knows all your stupid fucking tricks. There's another category that there's way too many to mention, and they all rule because, honestly, it's just so adorable. Like, familiar bonds are easy bait for me, and not in a creepy way, you weirdos. Street Fighter 6 Alex, get out of here. An easy favorite mommy character is Marusensky. In her career mode, she doesn't really have a high goal, she just loves to run. The only thing she does want is to inspire the future generation, mainly her grandkid, Special Week. She also has a very strong relationship with Sakura Shiyo no O, who was sired by Marusensky. Particularly, the moment they have in Cinderella Grey is my absolute favorite. Shoutouts to Sakura Bakshin O constantly crashing into Kita-san Black, which is just great. Also, with Manhattan Cafe being a creepy haunted weirdo who loves coffee, it's no surprise that Red Desire is a religious creepy weirdo that loves lattes that her dad makes. But I'd be a fraud if I didn't mention the GOAT, Dad of the Year, every year, stay gold. Triple Crown Champion Ofevra, Dream Journey, Nakayama Festa, Phenomenal, and Gold Ship. Like, talk about leaving a strong legacy of absolute winners. Granted, one of them is a domestic terrorist, two of them might be involved with the Yakuza, and one of them is a cop, which is a big turnoff for a lot of people. But that's still a lot of winners. But also, Stay Gold is like just right there, minding her own business, being chill as fuck, and they all love her, and they all get along super well with each other. It's like, who doesn't love a big problematic family? Alright, let's calm it down a bit and talk about some hillbillies. Country bumpkins are characters who are notable because they represent other areas of Japan that aren't the big main metropolitan areas of Japan like Tokyo, or they represent more traditional values. Special Week representing Hokkaido and Oguri from Kasamatsu of the Gifu Prefecture both represent the countryside hero making it big in the city and becoming the greatest of their generation. I mean, everybody loves an up-and-comer from the boonies. Now, I'm not 100% adequate with Japan's culture across its multiple regions and islands, so a lot of these just bounce off me and I don't really understand them. So I'm going off this purely on character descriptions, character interactions, and their dialogue. But most notably, one that they went a little too hard on is Yukino Bijin, which stands out by being too country. To the point of me just not digging her at all. But I do think her looking up to Gold City and wanting to become a big city girl, and Gold City being envious of her simple and humble upbringing is pretty cute. I just hate reading her dialogue, which I would imagine would be accurate if I had more nuance for Japan's culture. I don't know, I'll let you know when I visit there.
Mika looks kind of weird on this one, huh?
Moving on to the opposite of a country boomer, a city zoomer. For this category, there's only a few with qualities I enjoy and qualities I genuinely despise. The Umamusume project was first revealed in 2016, and the game did come out in 2021, so there are bound to be many modern characters with a lot of modern mannerisms. I mean, you have a franchise depicting races that happened in the 80s being live-streamed to social media. There's only 3 notable characters in this category. One of them I already talked about, but Tansen Jordan is one of the other Gyarus in the cast, this one having similar mannerisms to Daitaku Helios, but her gimmick are her nails, which does lean harder into the Gyaru archetype, but while she is a bit more down-to-earth and can turn off the gimmick, she just won't shut up about her nails. She's also notable for being the prime target for Gold Ship's acts of terror, which comes from the two horses' real-life beef they had with each other. In one incident, Gold Ship didn't like Tansen Jordan being the new hot shit at the stable they both resided in, and instead of having to bow his head to him, Gold Ship did what Gold Ship do and kicked the living shit out of Tansen Jordan. Zoomers are also those who are in touch with modern social media. One of the biggest being Karen-chan and her 3 million followers on horse Instagram or whatever. Now, while I am willing to tolerate people using brain rot speak, I am less willing to tolerate Karen-chan speaking in hashtags. Also, shoutouts to Transcend for being a dirt-running e-girl. You can ignore these next 2 categories because we might differ on what we consider genuinely annoying and interesting about certain characters. And there's too many that I consider fit either, both, or a large amount of them fit neither, to be honest with you. So in the description, I'll add one version of this chart that you can download and adjust for yourself. So quick fire note, I genuinely do not enjoy any of the Mejuros because I find them all boring, and I do not enjoy hoity-toity spoiled characters despite how nice and humble they come off. I'm just not down with the bourgeois, or the bourgeoisie, however the fuck you pronounce that. With the only exception being Palmer, as she is the most down-to-earth and normal out of all the Mejuros. She's also besties with Helios, which helps a lot in her favor, but she actually is someone that to me fits neither of these categories, because she doesn't particularly stand out in a particular way, and at the end of the day, she's still a Mejuro. By that logic, you would think I would be okay with Mejuro Ryan, as she's just a gym bro and is the least Mejuro out of all by a country mile. But if I were to go into why I do not like Mejuro Ryan, we'd be here for a while. So instead, I'll rant about Sounds of Earth. Going back to the one-word descriptor, I used the word that best fits Sounds of Earth, which is fraud. As we very quickly learn in Season 3 of the TV anime, her violin is just a music box and she doesn't actually play the violin. 2, she talks the maddest shit like she's a Timu version of TMO Prao, despite her never winning a G1 race. 3, pretends to be Italian while she's like Japanese with American parents. 4, no disrespect to Makiko, she actually does a great job at performing the voice of one of the most obnoxious people imaginable, classical music nerds. Like, suck Beethoven's dick all you want, I'm just trying to listen to Kendrick. 5, I don't care how flirtatious and out there you are with your rivals, personal space is important. And to top all that off, out of the entire loser crew, she's the only one that's a 3-star, so you have to gamble for her, because someone at Cygames thinks she's that worth it. And let me tell you, she's not. Okay, now bringing it back to good vibes. There's a lot of characters I find fascinating. Tachyon and Opera are my top favorite characters of all time, for reasons that should be obvious. I know they're overrated, and I don't care, I still love them, but if there's one character that just speaks to me and is the reason why I will patiently wait for them until she comes to Global, Still in Love. This character has a lot of people excited. I myself have avoided going too deep into reading her profile, but from what I've seen on both her page and in Party Dash, I am very, very interested in learning more about her. Aston Machen is a very close second who, funny enough, is also in the same team as Still in Party Dash. Thankfully, Machen is scheduled to release fairly soon this year. It speaks to the strengths of these two characters that it actually made me purchase Party Dash just so I can get a peek at their personalities. I did buy the game at a very steep discount, which is the only valid excuse to buy this overpriced, kinda mid-party game. However, while I booted the game back up to record footage for this video, I actually discovered that there's a secret Vampire Survivors mode that's actually pretty dope. These next two categories were kind of a struggle to do proper research for because, just like you right now, you're starting to get sick of it. Now in the case of Meisho Doto, who's a mixture of both, I'm defaulting to whatever the wiki says, or whichever side is stronger. I'll be very unpatriotic and talk about Europe first, since we're already talking about Meisho Doto, and her also being a perfect example for this category, being Irish bred and due to JRA's ruling at the time not allowing foreign horses from racing in the classics, which Cygames strategically sidesteps by saying, oh, she's actually a late bloomer, she's too weak to race in the classics. Oh, what? There's no xenophobia here. Which is not entirely wrong. Meisho Doto did have a late debut at 4 years old, but it's still kind of mean. Now, there's a surprising amount of Americans, or characters with American backgrounds. Obviously, the one that comes to everyone's mind is Taiki Shuttle, the only student at Transcend Academy who's allowed to open carry. But I also want to shout out Symbolic Chris S, who is not only one of 2 playable characters of color, she's also capable of doing something that only the highest levels of Americans can achieve, which is being able to summon a gun out of energy.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss.
These next two are categories which might have some points of contention. First, we have, why the fuck are you a racer? Now, I understand the premise that Umamusumes are born to run. Fujikiseki had a promising future as a performer and an actress, but the world of racing called out to her, so she followed. Similarly, Gold City seems to manage both being a model and a racer, but being an Umamusume, she clearly prefers one over the other. But here's the thing, I don't fully buy it since you're still kinda doing it. Admittedly, a better example for this would be someone like Major Arden, who seems like she's about to die every time that she races, which, to be honest, you're already born into a rich family, just like go work as a politician or something. Next we got, why the fuck are you a student here? Another common Japanese stereotype is a school setting and barely seeing the students actually do school-related activities, which is fine because, as it turns out, actually showing that is pretty boring. But there's a surprising amount of characters that I genuinely don't know how they are making it in this school. Like, I feel horrible for having to say something even slightly negative about Haru Urara, but we are led to believe that Trenton Academy is one of the most prestigious schools for Umamusume in all of Japan. So how the hell did she get in? Haru is another character with more brand recognition than the main mascots of the franchise, and while her flaws are her biggest appeal, I am left baffled at how she got into school in the first place. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just asking questions, like, maybe it's just her pure raw optimism and never give up attitude that made director Akikawa pull some strings, or maybe she has some of Nakayama's friends over here for some help, like, hey, get that shit out of your mouth. And you too. And I don't care if that's your gimmick. Yeah, you can walk and chew gum at the same time, but I don't know about running and chewing gum at the same time. Man, I don't know why I feel so uppity all of a sudden. I feel like I'm a cop. Cops are characters that are rule sticklers and rule enforcers. Bamboo Memory and Air Groove are such examples of enforcers of good conduct, school policy, and party crashing. And then there's Phenomenal, who is an actual cop. Now, her uniform resembles more of a traffic cop, and she mainly focuses on helping out the community, like helping old ladies cross the street and whatever. But her sharp stare, deep voice, and violet eyes end up making people fear her more than they feel safe. Although in my case, it makes me want to say, you can do whatever you want to me, officer. Again, most people don't care for cops and party poopers, but it is a very common trait amongst the more serious members of the cast. Although it is worth mentioning that Sakura Bakshino is a class representative, so she is technically a cop. However, I don't think anybody takes her seriously. They just gave her the title because she can run fast and she's very loud. And I just want to reiterate that Bamboo Memory does carry a bamboo sword, and although Phenomenal is just a traffic cop, she is at least 20% American, so you really don't want her to exercise her full extent of the law. For some disturbing reason, Cygames loves this running gag, particularly in the anime, of having their characters overeat to the point of stuffing their bellies full, which is kind of funny, but the amount of times you see it is awfully concerning. Despite their popularity for being fat fucks, Special Week and Ogre Cap aren't the only two notable fat fucks in this franchise. In season 1 of the TV anime, there was that one episode where, along with Ogre, Super Creek and Tamamo Cross competed in a food competition with Inari Wan on commentary. And in typical Super Creek fashion, spoilers for Cinderella Grey season 2, go to this timestamp to skip, she performs an illegal accidental move that gets her disqualified from the match. Oops! There's also in that same season those same characters representing the Cinderella gays and showing full support with bellies out and everything. What a weird fucking show. Now, on the other side of the buffet table is Heishi Miracle. She's mainly seen stuffing her face if you paid enough attention to the background of Beginning of a New Era. And it doesn't help that in both her prototype and final design, her racing outfit does make her look a bit tubby. And I don't know much about Buena Vista yet, but her being a descendant of the ruler of Japan Buffet, I would not be surprised if there's a tiny black hole in her stomach. Look, I'm not good with fat jokes, they're a bit above my weight class. But obviously, there is only one fat fuck supreme, and it is the throat goat Ogre Cap, the grey beast of the cafeteria. So much so that it is often theorized that her endless stomach is the reason for her immense strength and drive. However, learning more about Ogre makes me question that a little bit. Her single-minded approach to life and her seeming just kinda lost most of the time, I would be more inclined to believe that her other source of strength is just a touch of autism. If not, she could be a bit on the spectrum. Some of these characters are also weirdos, but their weirdness could be interpreted as having some sort of neurological deficit that they exist with, such as Silent Suzuka being this extremely quiet, timid, and having a very closed-off personality at first, but it's her obsession with the view from the lead that empowers her and pushes her to become the otherworldly frontrunner we all know her as. Or how Mihono Bourbon, despite her normal upbringing and somewhat strict training regimen, she can't really turn off her robotic personality. She can speak normal sentences, but those are usually preceded and or followed with robotic speech, and it's seemingly rare for her to show normal emotions unless she's around Rice Shower. And lastly, Mejiro Dober, deeply secluded life and being surrounded exclusively by women, does lead her to having small freakouts when she is dealing with men. Also, she has a weird obsession with showing shoulders, like, I don't know what's up with that. I mean, Bakshin's got all the pit freaks covered, so I guess there's something for everyone here. And for our last category, we have a very special one. Throughout this project, you may have seen me repeat many names across multiple categories, or see multiple Umas sharing similar characteristics. This is bound to happen when you have such a massive cast. You start seeing a lot of them sort of blend into each other, like Daishi Ruby and the Satonos are just discount Mejiros. It hurts me to admit it, but it is true. Meicho Doto is just Rice Shower but taller and bigger boobs, and Zeno Liam Neeson is just Rice Shower with glasses. Tanhoisa is just another bumbling fool who fucks up everything in the crucial moment, just like Doto, but she's different because she ate a spider.
Hi.
Blast One Piece is another Uma with an ultra-friendly personality like a Taiki Shuttle, but she's obsessed with humans and learning about human culture, which differentiates her a little bit. So, a lot of them are cut from the same cloth but sewed a little differently. However, a good 30% of the entire cast share one thing in common. The 1989 Kentucky Derby winner, Sunday Silence. After leaving a long, successful career in the States, he was shipped off to Japan to be a breeding stallion, which means he got to fuck a lot, and that he did. In fact, he did it so well that he sired multiple G1 winners from 1995 to 2007. His bloodline was so strong, his offspring would carry on his legacy by also making some strong winners. Among them stand some of the aforementioned greats, Stay Gold, Agnes Tachyon, Mahan Cafe, Special Week, Silent Suzuka, and many, many, many more, which makes it even more weird after talking about the Yuri part for so long. I call this category 6 Special Weeks from Sunday, and if the title is confusing, it's because you're stupid and you don't know what 6 degrees of separation is. Maybe you should read a book instead of having a plagiarism robot read it out to you. The concept is that all people are 6 or fewer social connections away from each other. Basically, you, Jimmy, you know Billy, and Billy is roommates with Timmy, and Timmy is brothers with Silly, who had sex with Tibby, who is friends with Biffy. Having said that, the world of thoroughbred horse breeding does go pretty far, but genetics don't. You're genetically way closer to your grandpa than you are to your great-granddad. So, for this category, characters meet this condition if their real-life counterpart is sired or grandsired by Sunday Silence. There are a few cases where Sunday is there but further back, but again, at that point it doesn't really seem to matter. Although, fun fact, Matikane Fukuyitaru's god, the Great Shiraoki, is a reference to the horse's great-great-grandmother on the maternal side, Waka Shiraoki.
Actually, you're wrong there, idiot. It's more likely to be based on the horse's great-great-great-great-grandmother, just named Shiraoki. You fucking idiot.
Which might be the only case of a generation that far having influence on a character's design. But also, Marusensky is around, so it's kind of the same thing. She's like from the fucking 70s. I already mentioned a few already, but the most notable out of all of them is Manhattan Cafe, who is literally a spitting image of him. And it is theorized, well, kind of just implied at this point, that Sunday Silence is Cafe's imaginary friend. She, the spirit of Sunday silence, is mentioned to have always been close to Cafe and has always pushed her forward to pursue running, and thus Cafe's only real goal is to be able to catch up to her friend. Spoilers for beginning of a new era, Cafe's imaginary friend seems to be the limit that Tachyon is seeking to surpass, which would make sense as to why only she would be able to catch up to her, even though she can't see her, which greatly upsets Cafe. And in Cafe's career mode, the spirit of Sunday is seen to be able to interact with some of his descendants, like Special Weeks, Silent Suzuka, and Xeno Bob Boy Toyroy, which also become your goals to defeat during her senior year. Fun fact, Cafe looks so much like his dad that he acted as Sunday Silence in a drama about how Zenya Yoshida acquired Sunday Silence and changed horse racing in Japan forever, which is why all descriptions of the character make mention of Cafe being an actress at one point in her life. And with that little factoid, we reach the end of this exhausting but incredibly fun adventure. Thank you all so much for watching. Despite my procrastination, this was such a fun project to make, and I do have plans for more rambly and excessively detailed Umamusume content, or just other stuff I happen to be obsessed with at the time. So subscribe and stick around for that. And I also stream on Twitch once in a blue moon, so maybe you'll catch me streaming some Umamusume around there. I don't know. Now get the fuck out of my house. Although in my case, it makes me want to say, you can do whatever you want to me, officer. Like that Lil Wayne song. That's dumb.